Evening, sir.
As noted, I'm Jess Herrera, I'm the Harbor Commissioner at the Port of Hueneme. And if you can hear me, clap. How many of you were here last night? Do you remember that? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anyway, it's a great privilege to be here at the Bard Mansion. And I want to thank Travis and his family for inviting me to be here tonight. I think it's a great honor. I certainly have a great deal of respect for Thomas and Richard Bard, the people who are responsible for this venue and also the Port of Hueneme. And anytime that I can say anything positive about that, I'm very happy to do so. Travers wanted me to just say a few words about what we've been doing at the port lately. And I'll just give you a quick recap about my travels. Recently, I have had the opportunity to travel to South America, to Chile and Peru, to try and get some new business here for the port. Things look promising in both areas, and it's the type of thing that might be taking effect in a year or two. So we're looking forward to that. Also, just came back from a trip visiting Germany, where we visited some of our automobile makers that are doing business with the port. They're looking to expand their facilities, and they're very aggressive in trying to make the port grow with their automobiles. One thing that's been talked about and very people are curious about it are the port, and we are going to be going into a deepening project at the port. We have a project agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers where we're going to go from 35 feet to 5 feet. 35 feet to 5 feet deeper, which is 40 feet. Okay. I'll keep looking at Will. So you know, I should have had a trivia here. Does anybody know which size shoe I wear? I guess
your wife's name? 10.
13. No.
You got a good size 9.
It's size. Oh. I don't think so, John.
Hey, Jess, you'd have been much taller so much if you hadn't turned down this. You have big feet.
Okay. It's a friendly crowd here. Anyway, the port is looking forward to going down 40 feet deeper. 40 feet total. 5 feet deeper for a total of 40 feet. Okay? And the sand, the material, hopefully, is going to be very suitable for replenishment there on our local beach at Hueneme. Okay? Now, this isn't cheap, of course. You know, it's going to be a very expensive project, and as they always are, it's going to be 12.3 million, I believe. 12.3 million. The Corps of Engineers is going to pick up part of that. It's approximately $8 million, and the Port of Hueneme will be paying $3 million. However, a side effect of going deeper is that you have to once again stabilize your wharfs, and that's a very expensive project to get into. So in that project, we're probably looking at about $17 million to $20 million for the strengthening of the wharves after we have done the dredging. We have been very fortunate to get some of that money for the stabilization of our wharfs through a Tiger grant that was awarded earlier this year of $12.3 million, which we'll put towards that effort. And actually, that brings me to the other point that I'm up here to make today. And that $12.3 million was the effort of many people, one especially that's in this room with us tonight. And I'd like to say something about her. You know, when you look up the word representative in the dictionary, you know, you get a lot of things, but the one that I like is, it says one who serves as an example or exemplifies a class or kind. And to exemplify is to be a perfect example. Well, I'm very happy that we have a perfect example of representation here in this district. And that person was did a lot of the heavy lifting for the $12.3 million Tiger grant that we received. So it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our perfect representative, Julia Brownley.
Thank you very, very much. It is wonderful to be here. This is my, I think, second occasion that I've had the opportunity to join you for one of these events. And I am very, very honored to be here. And I, too, want to thank Travers Newton and Joanna Bard Newton for inviting me here today. It is really a privilege and an honor. And Joanna, I haven't had a chance to speak with you this evening, but your granddaughter told me that you're not 98 years old, you're in your 99th year. And there was a big, big difference with that. But you are an amazing young woman, and I hope we all can follow the footsteps that you are forging for us all. So, representing the Port of Hueneme and Naval Base Ventura County in Congress is really one of my greatest honors. And I have to say I am very humbled to walk in the shoes of Senator Thomas Bard, who served on the Senate Ports Committee in Congress and was truly the father of Port Hueneme. And there are many elected leaders here, and port commissioners, and port officers, and customers of the port. And the work I do in Washington, and some of the successes we have had in large part is very much due to the collective leadership, stewardship, and advocacy on both fronts, really, the commercial front and the national defense front, as we talk about the port. You know, on the commercial port, we are very, very lucky to have, you know, strong leaders like Jess, who has just been extraordinarily aggressive and forthright in securing financial resources to continually improve the efficiency of the port and to improve connectivity, to improve goods movement, which, you know, as we all know, ultimately makes this port much more competitive. And on the national defense front, the port and our community as a whole enjoy, I think, a tremendous working relationship with the Navy. We all know how important the Navy is to not only our national security, but also to the economic vitality of our Ventura County. And as a member of the Ports Caucus in Congress and a new member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, I've been proud of what we've all been able to accomplish in the last few years. Jess talked about the Tiger Grant. I will just add that the Tiger Grant, in Washington, we used to have things called earmarks, and members of Congress would fight for their earmark for their community. There are no more earmarks in Washington. The only game in town for additional resources is these Tiger Grants. And this is very, very, very competitive, and it was because of the leadership of the port and because of their extraordinary application that we were able to really win it. And I will say to you that there were 625 applicants for Tiger Grants, and less than 10% of them made the cut. So there were a lot of losers out there. We were winners, but there were a lot who didn't get what they needed. And I think, Jess, you might have also mentioned too the $500,000 of an EPA grant to expand the shore power project, an economic development grant for $1.5 million to improve the wharf and berths at the harbor, and recently signing the agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers for the deepening of the port. And the deepening of the port is a big deal. It is a big deal. I think it's a big, giant step for the port. And when the new Panama Canal opens, we're going to have opportunities to bring in new customers with bigger ships in the port, and to allow our current customers to really fully utilize their current fleets. So, all of these things are critically important and critical steps towards keeping our little port competitive in a very, very big international marketplace of trade. So I worked very, very hard in Washington to make sure that not only Port Hueneme is represented as a smaller port. People are always surprised when I tell them I represent a deep water port in the middle of California, on the Central Coast, because most people are familiar with Los Angeles and Long Beach and Oakland and San Francisco, and I tried very, very hard to keep the focus very much on certainly Port Hueneme specifically, but small ports in general across the country, because many times the big ports get all of the attention and fanfare, and we know that the smaller ports across our country are huge economic drivers for individual communities across the country and play a very large role in the global marketplace of trade. So, and I also, I think, when we talk about the Navy base, from my vantage point, I think it's just such a big, big win here that we have now become the West Coast home for the Triton, which with the Fire Scout that is here is making this base really a major hub for testing and evaluating unmanned aircraft systems. And so, the Naval Base Ventura County is now really a base that I think is on the cutting edge of technology and moving the Navy forward and leading in this really important area. But we all know that we have approximately 80 tenant commands here. Naval Base Ventura County is and will continue to be an essential strategic asset for our national security, and it will continue to play even a greater role in our national defense as the DoD, Department of Defense, continues to refocus and shifts its attention towards the Asia-Pacific region. So we are very, very lucky here in Ventura to have such a strong partnership between the Navy, our commercial port, and our community. And it could not come without tremendous leadership at the base, committed to working with our community really hand in hand. And tonight, we are privileged to hear from our new base commanding officer, Captain Chris Janke, and I have the privilege of introducing him. And throughout his career, Captain Janke has served with honor and distinction, both in positions at sea and abroad, as well as here at home. He has served multiple deployments in support of combat operations and Operations Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, and New Dawn. His awards, oh my goodness, go on it's a very, very long list, but some of them include the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, the Navy Meritorious Service Medal, the Air Medal, Navy Commendation Medal, Iraqi Campaign Medal. That's just naming a few. And if you'll just indulge me for one more moment, I wanted to share, I think Captain Janke and I have something really in common that I really wanted to share. So Captain Janke began his naval career as a P3 flight officer and was assigned to Patrol Squadron 5 at Naval Air Station in Jacksonville, Florida, as a Lieutenant JG at that time. Well, my brother was a P3 pilot, and toward the very end of his career, he was an operations officer, also assigned to Squadron 5 as a lieutenant commander. A little later in Captain Janke's career, he reported to Patrol Squadron 30 in Jacksonville as a flight officer instructor, and much Earlier in my brother's career, he also reported to Squadron 30 as a pilot training officer. They both served as lieutenants in VP 30. So here is where their careers did not cross. My brother retired as lieutenant commander. Not bad, not bad. But before Captain Janke left Jacksonville, he was the chief staff officer of Wing 11, which virtually operates and oversees all of the fixed-wing aircraft as commander. And of course now he is our Captain Janke, and I have enjoyed working with the captain, and I look forward to continuing to forge a very strong partnership in the months to come. And so let's all please give Captain Janke and our country a big applause.
All right. Applaud if you can hear me right now. Well, I'm going to do this because I don't have enough hands right now, and I've got to follow all these cues so I can get in. Nobody knows my magic codes to get into here. I'll load this up. But while that's thinking about it, before I start, thank you, Congresswoman Brownley, for those kind words, and thank you all for having me here tonight. It was really in part due to Kathleen Kurgan, as you know, who's the Commodore's wife. She couldn't be here tonight, but she reached out to me very early on and said, "Hey, this is a great group. You need to come talk to them. They have a passion for the history and the Bard Mansion, and they would love to hear from you that the partnership that the Bard is and represents here on the base, and that obviously the history. We wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be standing here in a uniform if it wasn't for the efforts of Thomas Bard early on to establish the port. And so thanks to her for getting me here. And also one thing that wasn't mentioned about Congresswoman Brownley that I think you should all know that I appreciate is her efforts in all Veterans Affairs. Pretty soon here. As I like to say in a very eloquent way, and my wife smiles, I'm very much closer to the end than I am the beginning of my career. And thus, I will be one of the retired veterans, much like you are, and so her hard work will pay off in my life very much so. And the other thing, too, that she is a champion of, and recently, too, is women in the military and women veterans. I have a daughter, I have a 14-year-old daughter. She is very much interested in the military, and the examples that she sees and the efforts that are done, hopefully, I got my hands together, that she will be a naval aviator someday. Maybe my son will be. Those efforts that are put in by Congresswoman Brownley in the form of not only women's veteran affairs, but women in active duty is a great thing too, and I think that'll be beneficial to her. So what I want to do tonight is I don't want to scare you with a lot of PowerPoint slides. I don't have a long presentation. I would like to offer time at the end. Hopefully by then you're through all the cookies and the ice cream, and you got some coffee, so you got sugar and your caffeine. You're all wound up. You can ask me some questions at the end. I just want to give you a quick couple slides here that talk about the base, what's a little bit of background, who we are, what we are, update, and then give you some of the challenges that I'm experiencing here. And I'm glad that Congresswoman Brownley said the new commanding officer. I've been in the job almost a year, but I like it when I'm called new still. I love that. So just a little bit about me. She talked about, but I like to do pictures. And thank you for reading off all my awards, but these are my biggest awards right down here. My wife and my kids. So I got 2 teenagers, so yes, I know you're with me, you're thinking about me and all the things that I have to do. But we're making it through, and I'm a proud papa of them. And my wife has, well, I shouldn't say how many years she has in the Navy because that would reveal her age, and that is not a nice thing to do. But her entire life, she has been in the military because my father-in-law was a 20-year veteran in the Navy. And so she said, I can't believe I'm marrying you and signing up for this some more. She has approximately 23 moves in her lifetime. So And I'm only responsible for half of those. So, but she's endured and she knows what it's like. We talked about, I'm P3 and P8 naval flight officer. I'm not a pilot. I sit in the back and I tell pilots what to do, where to put the bus. And, but I enjoy flying and have almost half a year in the air. I'm flying the P3s with the propeller outside my window. So if I talk loud, I can't hear real good, that's why. Naval base in Ventura County, we talked, Congresswoman talked about, we have about 80 tenants. And, you know, I explain this a lot so people understand, and I just gave a tour to my brother-in-law and his wife today, and I always love doing that because it makes me kind of break down for people that aren't in the military to understand what I do. Those 80 tenants don't work for me. So just imagine it like the mayor of any one of our cities here. And let's just take a large department store that is in one of those cities. The department stores, what do they care? What do they want from the city? They want support in infrastructure, water, sewer, electricity. They want fire support. They want police support. They want to be protected. They want to be taken care of. But does the mayor of a city care what's on aisle 5 in that department store? No, not really. That's their job. They take care of it. Okay? I need to know if they're growing and they need a bigger parking lot. Okay? But that's the relationship that we have, similar to a city and a mayor. We have about 19,000 people between our 3 locations. And if you didn't know, when we consolidated Naval Base Ventura County in 2000, we had Point Magoo, the air station, which was a standalone and run by NavAir. And then also we had Port Winnie here, run by the Seabees, as you all know, called CBC, Construction Battalion Center. And then we also had the island. And then in 2000 we combined all those, and I work for a bigger enterprise called Chief of Navy Installations Command. I have a 3-star admiral in DC who runs all that, responsible for all installations worldwide for the Navy. So we combined, that's where we get that 19,000. About 1,600 buildings, and I mention that because I'm responsible to walk through every one of those buildings in a year's time frame, which mathematically is impossible. So I try to get to it, but I don't. And we, as you know, we have 3 warfare centers. So that makes us kind of unique here. We not only have fleet assets, meaning like the Seabees, the E-2 Hawkeyes that go out on deployment throughout the world, but we also have research, development, test, and evaluation, the new weapon systems. And this is the only base that I've ever been on or I've ever known that has 3 different warfare centers located in the same spot. So that makes it challenging and good for me in that I have a lot of customers that are thinking about the same types of things. So I got to support them in that way, but it's a big enterprise. And that also drives those 19,000. 2/3 of those 19,000 people are non-uniform wearing like myself. So you might not see a lot of uniformed people out in town, but that doesn't mean you don't have a lot of people associated with the Navy. And those government civilians, and even my staff of about 1,000, about 2/3 of them are also not uniform wearing. Okay? And they do great things because they bring the technical expertise. I don't move them every 2 to 3 years like the military does, so they have continuity, and they have the knowledge and the dedication to it. And I would say they're just as, if not more, dedicated to the military mission. Just because they don't have boots on the ground in Afghanistan or Iraq or Japan or wherever, doesn't mean they don't care as much about the military and aren't dedicated to it. So we have right now we're undergoing a economic impact study, and we're going to try to see if that number is better or worse, but we think it's pretty accurate there, about $1.9 billion impact to the county. I told you about the 66%, and you know, in that skilled workforce comes a lot from those civilians and those warfare centers, not to take anything away from our fleet sailors. We are also a huge steward of environmental resources. A lot different over here than it is over at Magoo in the island. We have 2,100 acres of saltwater wetlands over on Magoo. And it's a very difficult thing to take a place that is home to tons and tons of birds to be flying around where a runway is and planes are taking off. So we have to work together. That is about the epitome right there of what we have to do with the environmental. I have a huge and dedicated environmental staff that helps enable that. They don't stop it, they enable it. And we're doing things like, we have erosion projects that I just went to talk to the California Coastal Commission about. We got approved because we have the way the coastline is, and we know, and I heard the clapping for the moving of sand. You never thought people would get excited about moving sand, but I would be. I'm jealous. I want something else. Because we have big submarine canyons that are they're eating away at the shoreline there, and we all know because of the curvature of the shoreline here, a lot of that sand moves, and that's another example of our environmental department. And we're continually improving our partnerships here in the local area. Now this slide was a result of Supervisor Kathy Long. I gave this brief, or a portion of this brief at RDP 21. Most of you here I think are part of or know what RDP 21 is. Great group that was started back when BRAC was starting to become a reality, and their efforts in a large part saved this base, I believe, in my opinion. And they're great champions of this base on a year-to-year basis. And one of the things Kathy Long says, you said you have great community relationships, how about a whole slide dedicated to it? And I did, and I ran out of room. I started going down, and I put them in alphabetical order, but I'm sure there's one or two that my folks would go, hey, you didn't put that on the slide. So if I'm missing something right now, I'm sorry, but this is, you know, it's a great sign that we have that many groups that we work with, and it's not just me. I mobilize my army of captains. I say, hey, once you're wearing the 4 stripes on the base, I know you don't work for me, but you kind of work for me. I need you to go to this Chamber of Commerce. I need you to go to this City Council. I need you to go to this meeting. Because we all need to be out there and having a great relationship. One of the 5 tenets that my boss, Admiral Dixon Smith, says that we as installation CEOs have to do is develop and maintain and foster relationships with the community. It's not the olden days where we set up our fence, and don't you come in here, you can't see what we're doing, it's all secret in here, and we're going to do all stuff. No, that's not the way it is anymore. We are a part of the community, okay? And we cannot exist. I would not be successful if I didn't have the partnerships of the local community and just some of these groups here to keep us going. We are growing. We are growing. First one up there on the left is E2D transition. We are home of the West Coast Hawkeyes, the E2C right now. And the D, the reason why I say we're growing, they're not only going to a new aircraft, they're going to bring an additional aircraft to every squadron. And you should know that when a squadron gets an addition, the number of aircraft in a squadron determines how many people are in that squadron, not only to fly it, but to maintain it. So they're going to be growing. They have a great big renovation project in a second hangar. The Coast Guard is a reality. They are coming here. They are renovating a small hangar that they're going to bring their detachment of search and rescue helicopters that are going to be based out here on a rotating basis. They're going to have 2 of them. And we have our fingers crossed that they can convince their boss, the Department of Homeland Defense, they don't work for the Department of Defense, they work for Homeland Defense, that they can get money in the future, maybe by the end of the decade, for a larger hangar to consolidate most of their aviation assets here at Point Mugu. They love Point Mugu's location. It's right on the ocean, the airspace is conducive, and they operate at a lot of private airports, which their fees are extremely high for everything, landing, fuel, services, and they want to reduce those costs. And I think as good stewards, even if they're not in my department, they're in my government, they're in my country, so we should help them be good stewards and lower those costs for them. So hopefully they can move down here in the future. The Congresswoman talked about, that's MQ-4C Triton. So don't let that picture fool you on the size. So if you've ever flown on a 757, large aircraft, 133-foot wingspan on that aircraft. Whoa. And it flies at about 60,000 feet and flies for 24 hours. So I don't want to work for 24 hours, and neither do those aircrews. So they go in shifts, and they work in a room, could be anywhere in the world, satellite communications with that unmanned aircraft, and that is a reality that is coming here too. We are deep into one of the hangar renovations projects, and the maintenance school is already completed, and there's sailors going through there. And I've seen kids walk around with the new VUP-19 is the name of the squadron. It's Unmanned Patrol, what that stands for. And they're already here, they're wearing the patch, so I saw a sailor pushing a broom the other day at the VUP-19. I said, hey, you're here, look at that, that's a reality. Fire Scouts, we talked about that, so smaller version on the left, about this tall, goes on the back of the ship. That is the reality that's here. And then the larger version there on the right is like the size of a TV traffic helicopter, anyone you'd see there typically. And you'll see that the windows where people normally sit, grayed out because that's filled with fuel. So when you don't have people on board, you can carry more gas, and that thing can fly for about 10 hours. And they're doing testing and evaluation of that right now. The CB Reserve Battalions are here. We took on an extra 3 of them. So you see a lot more surge in the summertime where those reservists are doing their drill period. And I put down all 3 of the warfare centers because they always have increasing business. When I talk about my challenges coming up, there's a lot of things that we're reacting to, but in a good way. They're expanding, they have good business, increasing with new programs coming on board. Okay? So looking back on 2015, so a lot of great things. So down there in the lower left is 180,000 of my closest friends that came to the air show to see it last September. And we hope in a couple of years we'll get the Blues back again. They're actually going to be in China Lake in 2017. So if you'd like to take a trip up to beautiful, glamorous China Lake, go up and see the Blue Angels up there. We finished up with the help of local partners, a great example of how we work together. The joint land use study identified a lot of the way forward for how we can work together and operate together here, and everybody still accomplishes the things they need to, and we do also through that study. We have a lot of initiatives that are going forward on that. Our higher headquarters security system, we're revamping all the ways that our security gets evaluated. Unfortunately, we learned some hard lessons through the active shooters, and we get drilled on that, and they're refining it. Higher headquarters and Navy is always refining that, trying to make us better. Support the Defense Forum, like I said, with a lot of planes coming through there, and a little bit of fun that we had the Cowboys and the Rams this year. So that's in the upper right, that's Howie Long's son right there. He was standing there, big man, about 6'4", 285 pounds, and he's just kind of standing there, and him and a sailor are looking at each other. I was like, what are you guys doing? He said, well, can I take his hat, and can he take my hat? And I said, yeah, have fun, but you better put an autograph on it. So he signed the kid's hat, and he took the sailor's hat and climbed on the airplane. And, community engagement, can't say enough about that. And the gentleman in the bottom there, that was Mike Pereira from Fox Sports, so he was at our Navy Ball. So I'm trying to build buzz always for the Navy Ball, having great speakers come down for that. And looking forward, a lot of fun things at the beginning up top there. The surf contest is coming back to Point Magoo. Yeah, I'm excited too. So come out there and bring a seat cushion to sit on the rock and watch the surfers out there, August 13th and 14th. We're going to have a mud run for active duty military, and we're bringing the military triathlon teams to Magoo. So they're going to be doing not a full triathlon, but a portion of it. It's also the CB 75th coming up next year, as you know, so we're already starting the planning with that. And NOC WD, it's their 70th year that they have been on Point Magoo, so we got a couple celebrations. Talked about the Coast Guard and the E2 renovation growth, and we're always looking for ways for energy conservation. I'll talk about it a little more in my challenges, and we're continuing to strengthen our partnerships. By the way, that picture in the lower right, that's the E2 hangar talked about under full renovation. And then the small little one on the bottom, that's the Triton hangar that's being constructed right now. Challenges. My motto is, I'm worried about what I can't see. If I see a building that is got some age to it, or it's got a leaky roof, we can pretty much fix that pretty quick. I don't know about the pipes under the ground, the sewer pipes underground, the water, the electricity, the infrastructure, that kind of thing. And everything that wants to grow on our bases, like I talk about a Triton hangar out there, a Coast Guard hangar. Well, the last time I checked, that was just a golf course at one time. So there's probably not real good fiber optic cable running underneath the fairways out there. So that's the kind of thing that I worry about. We have a 8-phase plan that we're undergoing right now, that we turn off power a lot of the time to replace high voltage infrastructure. As you probably know here in our base, we have contract guards that are at the gates. We're going to look for about a 2-year, maybe 3-year plan to slowly phase them out, and then it would be completely government civilians and a mix between government civilians and master at arms sailors. The CNO. The contract will remain though, because if you, a lot of our tenants use the contract to provide other security measures that are not really supporting me, but are supporting them. They follow my rules, but they support them. They do 3 times as much business for our tenant commands, doing things like that, than they do for the contract that they, at our front gate. So they will continue to endure, but at our posts, they will not, because CNO, prior to our current CNO, he slapped the table and he said, we're gonna find a way to man up the bases for the proper amount of security forces that we need. So that was a great thing, but it just doesn't turn on like a light switch. It takes time. San Nicolas Island, what we're doing out there is I have 2 dining facilities simply, and we are molding into one. And as probably many of you know, we couldn't have a picture of Port Hueneme without some cars parked on it, some brand new cars. We love the cars, because the cars mean money. We know that. And that money is used for great things here on our bases, and 50% of that money goes out to sustaining the island. And that's one of the things that we're going to use for that money out there, is galley consolidation, because we have a very, very old club, and we're going to renovate one building and be more efficient. Some 801 housing on Port Hueneme, that was an old lease that was about 30 years long, that is now under government control. We're going to put half of that to the Navy Gateway Inns and Suites, so we can house those reservists I talk about. And then also we're going to have some of it be unaccompanied housing for single sailors. Increased port loading, we're going to see a lot more down the lower left there. That's the Littoral Combat Ship. We're going to see that here a lot more. And if you saw in the harbor, we've got the USS Hopper out there. So we're seeing a lot more coming through NAVC to do testing. And then that small red area, that's an overhead shot of Magoo. Unfortunately, we're going to lose about 102 homes on Point Magoo that were in a former gas mask training area during World War II. And we cannot convince the public or the private partner that we team up with to lease those homes to take those homes. It's too much of a liability. So unfortunately, my house is smack dab right in the middle of there. So it will be one of the 102 that we tear down. The good news is about 100 homes that we were in negotiation with, they are taking and they are going to renovate. So we're going to increase by 100 units, renovating 100 units on Point Magoo to accommodate that growth that we talked about coming with Triton and E2D. Other challenges is as you probably know, we have many artifacts and funerary objects that were discovered throughout the years on San Nicolas Island. We're currently in government-to-government talks with many tribes on whose remains those rightfully belong to. And really it's between the various tribes to sort that out. We basically stand back and wait for that decision to be made, and then we will work with them on the proper honor and disposition of those remains back on the island, and also enabling their ability to visit those sites and pay honors to their ancestors. We're, like I said, conserving water and power. Our biggest challenge we see in that is proper metering. We all live in a house that has a meter on the outside, and we probably all remember the day when a meter man used to walk up and write down the number. Well, when you grew up on a base where we really didn't care, we really didn't care about how much water and power we used to use, things weren't designed like that. We may have 10 buildings behind a single meter. So now if I have 10 different tenants behind that meter, I'm trying to figure out who's the violator. I can't, because it's one meter. So what we're trying to do is improve our metering, and so that we can measure who are the biggest offenders. I might have someone innocently with a water leak behind that meter and doesn't even know it, and they're using up a lot of money. We got to stop that kind of thing. We got to be good stewards. My boss's goal is 5% greater than Governor Brown's goal for water savings, and we're getting there. El Nino, it's a reality. I wish we were getting a little more of it, but it is a reality. And that picture on the left is Point Magoo in 1998, where my neighbor told me when he was stationed there, he took a canoe down the street. Okay, so if you haven't been out to Magoo, it has a pretty treacherous Cayugas Creek bend right near the base. And if we get a couple storm events in a row, and a high tide pushing back, we could see some flooding down there. Now, we do have measures that we can put in place to shore up a wall and give us about another 4 feet, but we are preparing for that. We have had many town hall meetings with citizens. We're working very closely with Ventura County Emergency Operations, and we're ready to evacuate people if we need to for a short time. And as many of you know, in the city of Port Meade, that picture's kind of hard to see there, but that's about 500 feet of my fence line along Channel Lines Boulevard laying on its side. So we're working together with the city and appreciate their help in putting up a guardrail to protect that fence in our perimeter. And I'm open to any questions that you may have. All right. Questions? All right.
Did a great job.
Thank you.
There's everything.